or who experienced sexual violence prior to the age of 18. Sources are Violence Against Children survey data and togetherforgirls.org/about-the-vax/ and cdc.gov/global HIV TB.
Speaker is Shay Welch.
This panel today, taking action against HIV and violence to help create an equal and enabled world for women and girls. This is being presented in partnership with the Center of Global Health, Division of HIV and TB, the HIV Prevention Branch, and the Gender and Youth Team. Today, we will talk about how we can make the dream of a violent-free world a reality. You know, a dream is not just something you sketch on a paper, on a pad, and wait for it to come to life. A dream is a way to move forward and come true through dedication and hard work and focus. The dream includes safety and health for all girls and women. This dream, too, can come true even in light of uphill struggles against cultural norms regarding the role of women and girls. Preventing violence against women and adolescent girls is imperative to achieving epidemic control of HIV globally. Over the last 15 years, evidence-based approaches have been developed and implemented to counter the root causes of violence and increase support and linkages to care for women and girls affected by HIV. There is no single magic solution, but rather a layering of approaches and programs. Together for Girls, represented on our panel today, galvanizes coordinated actions across sectors to end violence and raise awareness guided by data. CDC offices in many African countries, supported by the President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief, or PEPFAR, implements the DREAMS program. DREAMS stands for Determined, Resilient, Empowered, AIDS-Free, Mentored, and Safe. Today, we will hear from representatives from CDC Kenya about their involvement with the DREAMS program. In addition to local and national government actions, inspiration to realizing one's dream also comes through the commitment of communities. CDC Nigeria will share experiences collaborating with local and national governments and communities to lead changes in policies and practices that prevent violence. Dr. Regina Benavides de Barros is the lead for the Gender and Youth Team in the Division of Global HIV and TB at CDC. She will serve as our moderator today and will lead our panel in a discussion about the importance of a multi-pronged approach to prevent violence and improve HIV outcomes among women and girls globally. Panel members will share not only their expertise and experience, but also mechanisms to support people who are subjected to violence. We are grateful to everyone for their participation in this important discussion and extend thanks to those not seen today who work diligently behind the scenes to make this a reality. To ensure this important conversation takes place, to ensure that a dream is not just something that is sketched on a pad. Regina, let's begin.
The speaker is Dr. Regina Benavides de Barros, lead for the Gender and Youth Team in the Division of Global HIV and TB at CDC.
Thanks, Shay. It's really an honor to be part of this panel Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. In honor of this year's International Women's Day, we'll be highlighting the role that each of us has to play in creating a more equal and enabled world through the experience of four amazing women who are on the front lines of addressing two forms of gender inequality, violence and HIV infection. A 2003 analysis conducted by WHO across 80 countries tell us that globally, 1 in 3, or 35% of women, have experienced physical and or sexual violence by an intimate partner. The CDC's Violence Against Children surveys estimate that 1 billion children, or half the children in the world, will experience violence, and data is still revealing that more than 1 in 4 girls experience sexual violence before their 18th birthday. Because violence is both a cause and a consequence of HIV, we are at an opportune moment to address both epidemics with data, with action, with our voices. It is my pleasure to introduce our first speaker, Dr. Daniela Ligiero. She is the Executive Director and Chief Executive Officer of Together for Girls, a global public-private partnership dedicated to ending violence against children, especially sexual violence against girls. She also serves as the chair of the Executive Committee of the Global Partnership to End Violence Against Children. She is also a survivor of sexual violence herself and has been speaking publicly about her story for the last decade. Daniela, thanks for joining us today. I want to start with you asking to tell us a little bit about your work and what drew you to this issue.
The speaker is Dr. Daniela Ligiero. She is Executive Director and Chief Executive Officer of Together for Girls, a global public-private partnership dedicated to ending violence against children, especially sexual violence against girls.
Hello, yes, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. It's such an honor to be with all of you here today. Thank you for joining us. As you mentioned, Regina, I run an organization called Together for Girls, and we are a public-private partnership focused on ending violence against children, but paying special attention to sexual violence and to girls. And we've been around for about 10 years. The US government has been an instrumental partner for Together for Girls, the CDC, as well as USAID, the Department of State, PEPFAR. And really, the nexus of the partnership, the reason for being of the partnership is that we believe that a problem of this magnitude cannot be solved by a single actor or a single sector alone. And so the idea is to bring UN agencies, governments, private sector, many other stakeholders together to address the problem of sexual violence against girls. And at this point, we are active in over 22 countries and have been able, as you mentioned, to collect a lot of data. I'll talk a little bit more about that later, but really making an impact on the issue of violence. And for me personally, as you also mentioned, the passion for me really comes from a very personal place. I am a survivor of sexual violence in childhood, and many years ago, over a decade ago, started telling my story because really the silence around this issue was deafening. And I believe that part of what we need to do to really make a difference on this issue is break that silence and make it safe for survivors to come forward. So it's a real honor to be with you here today. Thank you so much.
Speaker is Regina Benavides de Barros.
Thanks, Daniela. This is super important that you are, as you're saying, making visible this situation that many, many girls and women have been going through. So now I want to go to our second speaker, Dr. Adiola Ayo. She's joined us from the CDC in Nigeria as the Gender Program Specialist, where she provides technical guidance on gender mainstreaming, gender-based violence prevention, and response. She has over 12 years work experience in health and developing organizations. She holds degrees in medicine, surgery, and public health, and has received multiple U.S. Mission Awards for leadership and dedication to addressing gender inequalities and gender-based violence. Thanks for joining us today, Adiola. And I also want to ask you to tell us a little bit about your work and why it resonates with you.
The speaker is Dr. Adiola Ayo, Gender Program Specialist at CDC in Nigeria.
Thank you, Regina. I feel so honored to be part of this panel. Greetings from Nigeria. So what I do essentially is that I ensure that implementing partners are integrating gender in all aspects of the HIV prevention, care, and treatment programs. They are looking at the gender data to make informed decisions, and most importantly, they are programming effectively for gender-based violence care and response. I also sit on a number of technical working groups in Nigeria with governments, civil societies, academia, and other stakeholders, where I provide technical support on gender-sensitive programs and policies. I think to answer your question on what keeps me going, I think right from when I was in medical school, I've always been interested in issues around women's health because a woman's health is often more complex than that of a man, and it requires greater understanding and care. And at one point in my career too, I was opportune to design and lead an innovative project where adolescent girls created demand for sexual and reproductive health services using storytelling, writing poems, and all the likes. And seeing that was really rewarding for me. And then since right now, majority of violence survivors are women and girls, I see going to work as an opportunity to provide and design effective health programs to suit their needs. And I think I enjoy what I do. Thank you.
Speaker is Regina Benavides de Barros.
Great. Thank you very, very much, Adiola. And we'll hear more about your work in a minute. I'm going now to our third speaker, Caroline Kambona. She's a behavior scientist with the CDC Kenya office, where she provides technical oversight in the coordination of adolescents programming, orphans and vulnerable children, and gender-based violence interventions. Caroline has over 18 years of experience with local and international NGOs, government, and civil society alliance in East Africa. She was integral in setting up the establishment of the Gender-Based Violence Recovery Center in Kisumu County. So welcome to our panel today. And again, the same question for you, Caroline. Could you please tell us a little bit about your work and what made you want to focus in this area?
The speaker is Caroline Kambona, behavior scientist at CDC in Kenya.
Thank you so much, and Jambo from Kenya. As has been mentioned, I work for CDC Kenya, based in Western Kenya branch, and I support in providing technical support in coordination of the DREAMS program, OVC, and gender-based violence. Actually, I got inspired when I helped set up a gender-based violence recovery center, which was a standalone center. And I observed that majority of the survivors who are walking into the facility to access services were actually adolescent girls and young women. And most of them were coming in reporting late. And so it was very challenging to mitigate against HIV infection, because as we know, administering PEP requires within 72-hour duration. And so that really motivated me to begin thinking of how best to respond, how best to prevent cases of violence. And so in DREAMS, we actually go beyond just health. to address vulnerabilities associated with gender and gender-based violence and HIV. And so helping girls develop into determined, resilient, empowered, AIDS-free, mentored, and safe women is actually my motivation and inspiration.
Speaker is Regina Benavides de Barros.
That's amazing. That's really nice. And this is a very good segue to let me to introduce you to the fourth speaker of our panel, Swaiba Omar, a young woman who is using her voice to create change in her local community as a Dreams ambassador for the Utali Award in Kenya. Twaiba, she is 22 years old, and she was born and raised in the informal settlement of Matadi, Kenya, and has shown amazing resilience in overcoming challenges and representing the voices of survivors. After enrolling in the Dreams program in 2018, Swaiba soon became a mentor and facilitator to support other adolescent girls and young women in her community. She is currently studying social work to further her commitment in this area. Swaiba, welcome to our panel. Could you please tell us a little bit about your experience in Dreams and how it impacted your life?
The speaker is Twaiba Omar, Dreams Ambassador in Kenya.
Thank you for this opportunity. My names are Twaiba Omar. I live in Mathare and I was raised by a single mother, of which the challenge that I faced as I was growing up, I managed to join in a Dreams program. And I went through mentorship program and other program like gender-based violence. So after that, I was trained as a mentor and also a facilitator. So for me, my work is to communicate or to engage other girls in how to prevent themselves in getting HIV, and how to avoid cases like gender-based violence, how to report those cases in case it happens to them. And that is my work in Dreams program. That is what I do.
Speaker is Regina Benavides de Barros.
Awesome. Thank you very, very much, Twaiba. And we will hear more about your experience in a minute. Now, let me go back to Daniela, because Daniela, you mentioned that we now have data available, data that can show us the magnitude of the problem that we are facing. Could you please tell us a little bit about this Violence Against Children survey, what these surveys are telling us about the overall health impacts on violence against children?
Speaker is Daniela Ligiero.
Yeah, absolutely, Regina. So let me just start by saying that the Violence Against Children surveys, or VACs, that are led by CDC and in particular the Division of Violence Prevention with support from PEPFAR and other partners have really been a game changer in our field. 10 years ago, we had almost no data on the kinds of sexual violence that adolescent girls were experiencing. And now we have data for over 10% of the world's population under the age of 24, which is just phenomenal. Because you can't fix a problem or you can't address a problem unless you fully understand the magnitude of the problem, the risk factors, and the consequences. And one of the things we've been able to document is really the connection between violence and important health outcomes for girls. For example, we found that girls who experience sexual violence in childhood are much more likely, up to 3 times as likely to have an unintended pregnancy, up to 5 times as likely to have HIV. There are also risk factors for suicide attempts, depression, substance use, educational outcomes beyond health. And so really what we're beginning to understand is that when we think about HIV and sexual violence against girls and young women, we're really talking about twin pandemics that kind of feed off each other. And so having these data have been instrumental and helping us respond adequately and prevent violence. So I think all of you at CDC should feel really proud that you helped to contribute through all the work that you've done and the investments to really change the nature of our understanding globally when it comes to this issue.
Speaker is Regina Benavides de Barros.
Yeah, thank you, Daniela. Yes, it's so important to have data available, and as you were saying, it shows where to invest, how programs have to be responding to this data. So I want to go to Adiola and ask exactly a little more about that. Adiola, from your perspective and from the experience that you have, how do you think that the violence is really threatened to health programs?
I don't think we can reach HIV epidemic control without addressing violence in our programs. Janani has mentioned it's a twin epidemic or a twin pandemic, if I may. So violence increases vulnerability to HIV and also has effects on the entire HIV clinical cascade. Sexual violence, for instance, directly increases the risk of HIV transmission. Child sexual abuse may lead to increased risky sexual behaviors, such as engagement in sex work, having multiple concurrent partners. Physical violence, on the other hand, especially by an intimate partner, may limit the ability to use condom or even to say no to sex. Those who experience violence are less likely to test for HIV services and disclose their status if they are positive. They are less likely to be linked to HIV care and treatment and started on medications, and then less likely to be retained in care, stay on treatment, and achieve viral suppression. So I believe that if we are to reach HIV epidemic control, we have to address violence in PEPFAR programs.
Absolutely, and I think that you are making a great point. Showing the relationship between the two epidemics, if you can say so. But now I'm going to go to Caroline again, and just to dig in a little bit on what you have mentioned about what are the roles that violence play vis-a-vis the HIV infection among adolescents, girls, and young women.
Speaker is Caroline Cambona.
Yes, so just as has been mentioned, violence and HIV are a twin pandemic. I would also call it double tragedy. And a lot of adolescent girls and young women are at increased risk of both violence and HIV. And this we see in the gender inequalities that affect the ability of adolescent girls and young women actually to negotiate for safer sex, which means their ability to use condoms correctly and consistently is compromised. And as well as the use of other HIV preventive interventions like PrEP may be compromised as a result of violence. And so adolescent girls and young women actually stand a high risk of acquiring HIV because of also their age-based vulnerabilities, exposing them to things like transactional sex, things like early marriages, therefore compromising their ability, to negotiate for safer sex. And so in DREAMS, we work to actually empower the adolescent girls and young women with appropriate skills to prevent exposure to violence and the risk of HIV. And some of the skills we focus on negotiation skills, refusal skills, just to help the adolescent girls and young women, to prevent this pandemic.
Speaker is Regina Benavides de Barros.
Yeah, that's a very important point that you're making. And now I'm going to go to Swaiba. From your perspective, Swaiba, How have you seen violence play out in the lives of your youth peers?
Speaker is Deba Omar.
Okay, so when it comes to my peer, they get involved in physical and sexual gender-based violence, because one of the things is that majority of people or majority of young girls in Madare, you find that they get married earlier, so it increases the chance of them getting physical and sexual gender-based violence, as they always depend on a man to provide for their basic need, and in case the man refuses it, and now the woman becomes so angry, so it ends like the man now becomes so angry with the woman, and she starts beating her and use the woman. So in another perspective, you find like my young women, they are being shared with friends, in case maybe you find like I have my friend and the other friend, like in case I'm not on my period, like my husband is like, okay, yes, you can also sleep with my wife, because I don't have a choice, because I'm always depending on a man. So that is, those are the kind of example that my peers have experienced in Madare, and those are example of gender-based violence that I have.
Speaker is Regina Benavides de Barros.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big concern that, as you were mentioning, the importance of having women in increasing their agency to deal with these kind of pressures and situations. So we have to do much more in terms of violence response and violence prevention. Let me go a little bit more on the violence response. Daniela, I know that you have been mentioned that Together for Girls is an important public and private partnership, working with a lot of other partnerships globally and with governments and locally as well. Who are the key stakeholders for violence response? And how can we use data on the burden of violence to make a change?
Speaker is Daniela Ligiero.
Absolutely. Yeah, so I think one of the really important lessons that we've learned from HIV that needs to be applied to preventing and responding to violence is that prevention and response actually go hand in hand. So one is kind of interdependent with the other. When we think about response, though, one of the important things the vax has shown us is that only about half of people ever tell someone about the sexual violence they've experienced. And then much fewer seek services, and even fewer, less than 5%, actually get services. So if you think about that cascade, there are important steps and interventions at every step of the cascade that we need to think about. You know, when you think about breaking the silence, we need to create a community, a society, and safe spaces for survivors to come forward. And then when you think about service delivery and access, really you have to think about health. There's important components around, for example, post-rape care, which is something PEPFAR has done a lot of, but also thinking about justice, education, social services. And so really you're talking about multiple sectors coming together for adequate response, but first ensuring that those folks are actually, those women and young girls are actually seeking those services and then receiving quality services. And I think one of the most important things here is to understand that we have to do this in a multi-sectoral way. Health is a critical component of this, but justice, social services also have to be integrated. And I think there's some really good examples in terms of the work Dreams is doing that really show the way in how we can do effective response, which is very encouraging.
Speaker is Regina Benavides de Barros.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, you are highlighting an important point, which shows that to respond to violence, it has to be about a sectoral, multi-layered approach. So, Adiola, from your experience working in this response to violence, how could you give me one or two good examples of how you have been doing it programmatically?
The speaker is Adiola Ayo.
Thank you. So I think the starting point for us was to ensure that our HIV clinics are able to provide first-line support to survivors First line support is the immediate response we provide to any clients when they disclose violence, and we provide first line support through the acronyms LIVES. LIVES is L, we listen with empathy. I, we inquire about the needs and respond to the practical needs and concerns of the client. V is we validate their stories. We'll make them to understand that we believe them. We understand what they're going through. And E is we enhance safety. We discuss on how to protect the clients from further harm. And S is support to other support referrals, support and referrals to other services such as social support, justice, like Danana mentioned. And I think this is very, very critical in even at responding to violence. And then we also provide other clinical services such as management of injuries, provision of post-exposure prophylaxis within 72 hours, provision of emergency contraceptives within 120 hours, both for cases of sexual violence, treatment of sexual transmitted infections, and rapid HIV testing and counseling. But beyond that, what we are doing presently is to ensure that the highest quality of care is provided for survivors. This we're doing through program monitoring, quarterly performance reviews with partners, and more recently, we instituted a quality improvement project using the WHO PEPFAR quality assurance tool, which allows you to collect baseline data on all aspects of post-violence care services, identify existing gaps, and support facilities to fill those gaps. And the good thing about this is that during the rollout of the quality improvement project, we're able to engage the National HIV/AIDS STI Control Program here in Nigeria, which is an agency of the Federal Ministry of Health, to constitute a gender team, which right now they are trying to push gender issues forward, and definitely will support our advocacy efforts going on. So these are some of the few things that we've been able to do in Nigeria for the past couple of years in response to violence.
The speaker is Regina Benavides de Barros.
Thanks, Adiola. It's so important that you are highlighting the tools that we have available now and the importance of looking at this in a comprehensive way. So we have tools to improve the quality of services, but we have to be sure that everybody is engaged in this same aspect. But I want to go back to Caroline a little bit more to know how DREAMS, I know that DREAMS is looking for keeping girls HIV negative and free from violence. And we know as well that is a very strong program in preventing violence. But we also have the responsibility to provide services to respond to the needs of girls. So how DREAMS have been addressing this issue in terms of mitigating the health effects of violence?
The speaker is Caroline Cambona.
Just as Adiola has given us a perspective of what happens at the health facilities, we work very closely with the Ministry of Health. And actually, as a Kenyan program, we have trained a number of healthcare providers to be able to offer comprehensive post-violence care at facilities. And so in DREAMS, as we enroll girls into the program, we screen for vulnerabilities, and we also screen for violence. And in most cases, as we do the screening at enrollment, we find adolescent girls and young women who have faced different forms of violence. And so because these are chronic cases, we straight away link them for psychosocial support. But where such occurrences are fresh, we link them for comprehensive post-violence care services as appropriate. And so among those who are sexually active and at very increased risk of acquiring HIV, we actually provide education on pre-exposure prophylaxis and link quite a number of them for PrEP. So we have seen a number of adolescent girls, young women who are at risk of acquiring HIV using PrEP as a method of prevention. And so within DREAMS, we do multi-layered approach where we implement multiple of interventions that are evidence-based, that also integrate gender-based violence response and prevention. And so through these interventions, we create awareness among girls and young women so that they are able to report if at all cases of violence occur. They are able to report in good time for purposes of administering PEP. And so we also encourage for medical legal justice linkages so that it is not just reporting to health facilities, but also getting legal support.
Speaker is Regina Benavides de Barros.
Yeah, again, it's a very comprehensive package, and I'm happy to hear, as from Daniela said, and then Adiola said, and you too, that programs are really trying to address this multi-layered, through a multi-layered approach, what violence and HIV needs to be controlled and to be mitigated. Thwaiba, I mean, in the DREAMS program, I know that you have been playing an important role connecting with other survivors and girls that are more vulnerable or that they have witnessed or also be experienced violence. So from your experience, the work that you have been doing, could you please let us know a little more about what are the unique needs of youth survivors of violence?
The speaker is Deiba Omar.
So the unique needs of the survivor, in case we come across a girl or a young woman who has undergone gender-based violence, first of all, they need to be believed on, because it is not like something they have make it up, no. So for us, we believe in them first of all. Then we take them to health facility which they offer youth-friendly service. As they have said earlier, those in health facilities, like, they believe in them and they also give them youth-friendly service. So like there is no judgmental. They give them the PrEP because they're already exposed to HIV, and also the psychosocial support so that they can be able to take it. Like they shouldn't see themselves like they should ensure they shouldn't hate themselves. So like after they have believed on, they get the services from health facilities, and now like, yeah, so those are the kind of the unique needs of the survivor. For them, youth-friendly service at the health center, and also for them to be believed on, because those are the two things that they usually want for them.
The speaker is Regina Benavides de Barros.
Yeah, that's a very important point, not to be judgmental, to be supportive, to understand the unique needs, and to provide services in a timely way. But more than that, to support them at community level as well. So definitely we have to think about how to address violence, or how to respond to violence. But also, as Daniela was also mentioning, we have to look and focus on what we can be doing to prevent violence. Violence is preventable, as we know. What else can we do, and what are we already doing? So, Daniela, going back to you, what does the evidence say about violence prevention programs? I know that you have a lot of experience and you have been working with other partners in this area.
The speaker is Daniela Ligiero.
Yeah, so I think something you said, excuse me, Regina, is really important. And that is that, for the last decade, we've been working to accumulate evidence on the size, the magnitude of the problem, and we have quite a lot there. And we've also been trying to examine and study what works to prevent the problem from happening in the first place. And the good news is that there actually is quite a bit that works. And so now it's about really changing that narrative from there's a problem and there's nothing we can do about it, to there's a problem and there's actually quite a bit we can do to prevent it from happening in the first place. And at Together for Girls, we have been working with a variety of partners, including the World Health Organization, UNICEF, the US government, and many others, the World Bank. And we've been able to look at the global evidence on what works. And we put together a framework called INSPIRE. And INSPIRE really highlights the strategies that we know work to prevent violence against children, and that includes adolescent girls. So the first I in INSPIRE is really about the implementation and the enforcement of laws, so the justice sector. The N in INSPIRE is about changing norms at community and social level. The S in INSPIRE is about creating safe spaces, in particular for adolescent girls. The P is around parenting programs and working with families, like the Families Matters program that CDC has been implementing around the world. The next I is really about income strengthening and economic interventions that can help families and girls have access to resources. And then finally, you have response. We've talked a little bit about that and the importance of response. And E in INSPIRE is education and life skills, the kinds of things you can do to empower girls and communities to understand and better prevent violence. So that really gives us hope that there's quite a bit that can be done. And one of the things we need to do is shift to further investments in prevention.
The speaker is Regina Benavides de Barros.
Yeah, I mean that's really important. As you're saying, we have evidence, we have programs that are working, and we have to keep increasing the knowledge and increasing the evidence in this area. So thanks for sharing this frameworks and also the huge work that many different partners are doing in this area. So going back to one of the points that you make, and I want to hear from Caroline now. I know that DREAMS has also, I mean, the big focus of DREAMS is preventing violence, preventing HIV, preventing violence. So could you just give us one or two examples of how is DREAMS preventing violence? One of the things that in Kenya you have been doing?
The speaker is Caroline Kambona.
So for the DREAMS program, we mobilize communities and work with traditional change agents really to challenge harmful gender norms, which include things like violence, early marriages, and gender inequalities within the communities where we work. And we also work with adolescent girls and young women whom we cluster in different safe spaces that are headed by mentors. And as I mentioned earlier, we do a lot of layering of different interventions that have gender-based violence services and information integrated in there for purposes of preventing violence. And so within the communities, we use a first intervention called SASA, and SASA stands for Start, Awareness, Action, and Support. And this is delivered at community level consistently over a period of time. And so basically, we promote knowledge and skills on gender-based violence, how we can prevent it alongside HIV prevention. And we also work on response in terms of in case it happens and we have survivors, then we are able to link them to facilities and also to the police for purposes of legal justice. And so basically having a multi-pronged approach in ensuring that we address issues relating to violence.
The speaker is Regina Benavides de Barros.
Yeah, it's super important what you said. I mean, how you can keep moving the two aspects together, response and prevention all the time. Tribal, I now want to hear more about what have you learned about that in your experience in DREAMS within this prevention. How do you think that we are really getting better? Do you think that we could do better? So tell us a little more about your experience with violence prevention programs.
The speaker is Tayyiba Omar.
Yes, we are truly getting better because in what I learned is first the refusal skills on how to say no. I can say no to a man because you can't force me to do anything. So one of the things that I learned in the prevention program is on how to say firmly no, like no, I mean no, I don't want it. And also on the other aspect on how we also have like SWAT, of which it explained on say no. You explain the reason why do I say no, like I want to finish school, so no, I provide other alternative, like maybe instead of doing this, why don't we walk out or do something else, and then you try that alternative that you've already provided. And the next one is about swag. It's kind of the same perspective on say no. You explain why, you provide other alternative. Now on the G part is start forgetting out. In case I'm in a harmful relationship, I experience violence, I experience sexual, gender-based violence or physical. Now it's give me a chance to get it out. So those are the kind of intervention program in gender-based violence that I've interacted with, and that is what I have learned specifically. In case I have experienced anything, like I need to get out of that relationship so that I can be able to rescue myself.
The speaker is Regina Benavides de Barros.
Wow, important resources that you were mentioning, and I'm really happy to hear that girls are getting prepared to respond by themselves and to get support when they need. And Adiola, you mentioned that you have been doing a lot of work with the governments and civil society and other partners in the responding to violence. But you also mentioned the importance of linking both aspects. So what does violence response provide how does it provide insight into violence prevention programs?
The speaker is Adiola Ayo.
Okay, so we need to understand that violence is a vicious cycle. Experience of violence is a risk factor for future violence and even for perpetrating violence. And so what we've seen programming for gender-based violence response is that when we provide high-quality services, especially the first-line support using lives, we're able to empower survivors, we're able to expand the capacity to make informed decisions about their lives. And so, therefore, we break the vicious cycle of violence. The other thing is that we've heard over and over again, violence is a cause of HIV and it also results as a consequence of HIV. HIV positive patients are much more likely to experience violence more than the HIV negative counterparts. So when we provide post-exposure prophylaxis as part of our post-violence care response, we're able to go a long way in preventing violence, especially secondary violence.
The speaker is Regina Benavides de Barros.
Yeah, I mean, again, the linkage between response and prevention are there, and we just have to make sure that we have to put all the resources together and engage people on the different aspects of it. I will go to another last question before we go to our closeout, which is, okay, we have data, we have programs, we have engagement of different partners. We have programs that are working at ground level, but also at policy level. From your point of view, and this is a question for all of you, from your point of view, what is missing? What is missing? So I would like to hear one thing of each of you of what is missing as a way of really drawing our attention to this specific point. Let's start with you, Daniela. What do you think is missing?
The speaker is Daniela Ligiero.
Yeah, so I think one of the things that's really missing is that we need to move beyond kind of a group of folks like us who understand the issues, we're working on the issues, to really go to the general public, to decision makers, with two important messages. One is that we need to fight this idea that violence is inevitable and that there's nothing we can do about it, to really show there's a lot we can do and to change minds and hearts there. And the second is this belief that violence is something that's private, that the public doesn't necessarily need to do anything about, the public sector. And I think taking it outside of the private sphere to really say governments, organizations, community leaders, they all have a role in making sure that we're preventing and responding to violence adequately is another step. So it's really about reaching the general public and decision-making, people who have power, decision makers, to change the way we invest and the way we resource violence prevention and response.
The speaker is Regina Benavides de Barros.
Perfect. It's a very, very, very good point, Daniela. So now I'm going to go to Caroline, and I know that we are having some issues with her video, but let's see if we can get her. Yes, we can. Good. Caroline, tell us what is missing from your point of view.
The speaker is Caroline Cambona.
Yeah, we know that violence has very far-reaching effects in the life of an individual. And the truth is that the problem is continuously growing, and we just have to do something. We need a unified, multi-sectoral approach to ensure that we take a very immediate, not just immediate, but effective and sustained action to prevent violence. And we can contain violence if we work together. And that working together means that we must act now, because all of us have power to do something, and we can act now and we can start now. And that starting begins with you and me. We must actually just help create an equal and enabling world for girls and women.
The speaker is Regina Benavides de Barros.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And Twyba, from your point of view, what is missing?
The speaker is Theba Omar.
So for me, I would say we need more of the trainings to the youth, so that the youth can be able to be trained on their communication skills, like when it comes to communicate in any kind of issue, maybe when we face the leaders, like the real message on how to pack the message each well, on how the leadership skill to stand firmly, so that we can be able to express ourselves well. That is what I feel like it's missing.
The speaker is Regina Benavides de Barros.
Good point. And Adiola, with you, what is missing?
The speaker is Adiola Ayo.
So I think violence is still underreported, probably because of survivor stigma, and maybe because of fear of reprisal attacks from perpetrators, because most violence survivors know their perpetrators. So I think we need to end the culture of silence, like Danana mentioned. We need to use existing platforms to create awareness about violence and create awareness about post-violence care services. And the other big thing I think is that support services are not widely available. For example, there are few temporary shelters for adolescent girls and women, and none practically exists for men, at least here in Nigeria. But for the few that are available, we need, as the health system, it's an obligation to find out what services exist and to make sure that we are able to link survivors to the services.
Perfect. Very, very, very good point, Adiola. Thank you very much. So, dear amazing women, we are coming to a conclusion of our panel. So looking forward from your perspective, again, I'm going to tease you a little. What would you leave as a call to action? Let's start with you, Adiola, first. What would be your call to action in a few words?
Okay, so I asked that anyone working on HIV programs and more broadly within the health sector should think about the impact of violence on their program and make efforts to fully integrate violence response within their existing programs.
The speaker is Regina Benavides de Barros.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. And you, Daniela, what is your call to action?
The speaker is Daniela Ligiero.
Yes, Shay started with the idea of a dream, and I think for a long time, our dream was to make sure that girls and young women were healthy. And we've since evolved that to also say they should be educated. And I think the third piece of that really important dream is safe, because those three things go together. So really thinking about how do we make sure girls and women are healthy, educated, and safe as a vision for us moving forward.
The speaker is Regina Benavides de Barros.
Fantastic. And Thwaiba, you, what is your call to action?
The speaker is Thaiba Omar.
So my call to action will be whenever it comes to anything that concerns the youth, let always our youth be there, because in case in gender-based violence, majority of the youth, they don't know. They don't know that like these things are happening. So for me, I will feel like engagement of the youth is very important. Whenever it comes to an issue that is concerning the youth, let always our youth be there to talk it out, to advocate for it, because we are the one experiencing, we are the one who know how it feels to be in that position. So for me, I feel like let's always engage the youth in these things so that they can be able to understand and fight it over. That will be my call for action.
The speaker is Regina Benavides de Barros.
Fantastic. And you, Caroline, what is your call to action?
The speaker is Caroline Cambona.
Let us work together. Let us work together to support the processes. Let us prevent violence. That change begins from me. It begins from everyone else. And if we are all convicted that we can make a difference, indeed we will make a difference to have a better world free from violence. And preventing violence against girls and women is the place to begin with.
The speaker is Regina Benavides de Barros.
Fantastic. On that note, I'd like us to walk away knowing that we all can join this global movement to end violence. We can do more to involve stakeholders and elevate these issues in each of our communities. We can prevent violence by implementing interventions that we know are working. We can do a better job responding to violence with health, psychosocial, education, and legal services. We have to engage youth in our actions. We can seek collaborators in the fight against violence. Violence is a global issue, and what we have heard today from these amazing four women is just a small piece of the efforts happening all around the world. But this conversation doesn't end here. To learn more, you can look for some of our resources. Thank you very, very much for joining us today in this panel. Have a great day.
The speaker is Shay Welch.
I would also like to thank everyone for joining us today. As Regina and our esteemed panel members indicated, here are some resources for you to click on, explore. But some of the things that the panel said really resonate with me. And I started out talking about the dream, and it's not just a sketch on a pad. And Daniela talked about how we really have 3 issues, 4 issues, 5 issues. Violence and HIV are twin epidemics, as Caroline said. And when you add HIV on top of that, we have a tripod of epidemics, pandemics. But if we are not safe, we are not secure, we are not educated not only on what we can do and can become in our dream, But if we are not safe in our environment and as individuals, then our dreams cannot come true, no matter how much we believe in those dreams. I would like to ask each of you, as Caroline said, we can create a world without violence. It starts with each of us. It starts with me. It starts with you. You as an individual, whether it's within your own actions or reactions to something, or within your family, within your community, within your church, within your village. One of the things we witnessed today on this first ever global international panel via technology was Caroline's video going in and out. In our field offices, that is a daily challenge. As we witnessed Adiola's lights going off because of loss of electricity and use of her laptop battery, that is a reality in many of our CDC field offices, as well as in the villages and remote and rural locations in which we are striving to reach women and adolescent girls. Dreams. I dreamt when I was little that I would become Batwoman, Catwoman, that I was the Lone Ranger and not just Tonto. Words matter, microaggressions matter, those are all violence. It's not just physical violence, it's psychological violence, it's social violence, it's cultural norms, it's traditional norms that have been learned oftentimes from colonialism. Today in the United States is actually 200 years ago, the very first day the Constitution went into effect. The very first action of the first Congress of the United States was to adjourn. We are not going to adjourn. This topic will continue on and move forward as our young and our youth and our ambassador to dreams has talked about today. When we engage our youth and our children and our adolescents into developing what they want their future to look like, we are here to support them. Thank you every single person for watching. Take a look at these resources. Explore how CDC, PEPFAR, Dreams, Together for Girls, and other global, local, and national organizations have come together to help you make your dream a reality.
To learn more about the CDC's global work to end HIV, visit cdc.gov/global-HIV-TB. To learn more about the CDC's Violence Against Children and Youth surveys, also known as VACS, visit cdc.gov/violence-prevention/child abuse and neglect/VACS/index.html. To learn more about PEPFAR, visit state.gov/PEPFAR. To learn more about Together for Girls, visit togetherforgirls.org.